Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. John Tantillo, and I want to welcome you all to Brand Talk, another way to talk. And what we do here is we talk about brands. And each week we bring in a successful branding personality who gives us his tips on how to go brand himself or herself, as well as providing some insight onto what's happening um, in the week of public events, okay, or current events. And today we have a very, very, very special guest. And not only is he a special guest because he's a friend of mine, he's a special guest because he's very, very accomplished. And his name is Tom Del Beccaro. And he is an acclaimed author, speaker, as well as a columnist for Fox News, Fox Business, and the Epoch Times. He is the former chairman of the California Republican Party and the former U.S. candidate from Senate candidate from California. Tom is the author of the very popular book and very relevant book called The Divided Era, which explains how the more government decides, the more it decides. Tom is the host of the television show Politics in Perspective on KRON TV in San Francisco Bay Area. Tom is the publisher of the Political Vanguard, where he publishes a commentary on many political events and ideas. He is a contributor to Newsmax, and where we are colleagues together, Newsmax TV. And he's going to talk about today. One of the many things he's going to talk about today is this idea of his petition to recall Gavin Newsom, the California governor. So without any further ado, welcome, Tom, to Brand Talk. How are you
John,
today?
I'm doing good. It's just after 9 a.m. out here. It's good to see you. I hope New York's doing well. I can't wait to get back.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you to talk up a little bit if you can.
All right.
Okay. Sound good? So,
it sounds good. So in California, of course, there is, how shall we say, continuing trouble. The state of California, as you know, is moving farther to the left. That's its brand. It's becoming a more blue state, really by the day, it would seem, with so many people moving out. But it has many associated problems with its growth in government and its leftist politics, and that's part of what I address.
yeah. So how do you recall somebody? I mean, how many petitions do you need, or what's the process?
Okay, so to recall a California governor, the process is you need to get a certain percentage of signatures of those who voted in the last gubernatorial election. So in this case, that means we need to collect, and I'm part of the group called Recall Gavin 2020. That's recallgavin2020.com. You need to gather 1.5 million valid signatures. So we, in general, will get to about 2 million that we're going to collect. You turn that into the Secretary of State, they verify it. We have 160 days to do that. They have a period of time to verify it. And then once the signatures are certified, then a special election is called 60 to 80 days out. The process of collecting those signatures means that we will actually go for about 2 million, and we'll do that through a combination of the many, many volunteers that have signed up. Really something I've never seen before in my career in politics, which when you throw in my father's experience, that covers some 60 years now. And I've never seen anything like this. And we'll also have paid signature gatherers.
So what do you think are your chances of doing this, or being successful at this?
Well, prior to COVID, there were prior attempts, and they were unsuccessful because despite their well-meaning nature, there wasn't quite the organization needed and quite the right moment in time. But since the COVID shutdown, Gavin Newsom has shown himself for who he truly is. He is not good at his job. He has left the state with a $54 billion deficit. I want you to think about that, because that's larger than most states' total budget. $54 billion deficit, which he's going to want to raise taxes on. He's trying to gut property protection. We're going to have our wildfire seasons coming up, and we're going to have power shutdowns. So the problems in California, based on his response and the manner in which he handled COVID, are about to become really significant. Opening up is only half the story. And so the appetite for this has grown substantially in the last couple of months.
Well, you know how you and I love the polls. What are the polls looking like in terms of his approval rating?
Well, if you look at the standard media approval poll, his approval rating is above 50%. He looks okay, but those were mainly done at the beginning of COVID. They don't reflect the current set of problems. California, as you know, going into this, has a historic number of the percentage of people in poverty in this country. Prior to the shutdown, they had over 30% of the welfare recipients. Now, what he did in treating the state as one size fit all was shut down parts of the state that shouldn't have been shut down. In fact, there were 3 huge geographic counties in the state that never had not one single case of COVID. Even where I live, which is a county with over 1 million people, I think it's the 10th largest county, they continue to have things shut down, although they're starting to open. Mm-hmm. And there's only 11 people in the hospital. 11. So what he has done is unleashed a whole set of problems, and the massive tax increase to come will not play well. So the polls taken in March and early April don't reflect the problems he's about to face.
Yeah. Well, I have a very, very dear friend of mine that I've known for years. I won't mention the person's name, but he thinks that Governor Newsom, is the best thing that happened to California. Of course, he's a progressive. He's worked in the media, and now he's retired, and he's got another business there. But he thinks Newsom is doing a great job. How are you going to fight? I would say you're going to get resistance from the establishment, but I guess that never stopped you.
Yeah, no,
my fighting.
My family's been fighting the establishment for those 50 years I described. Look, among those that are doing well and are Democrats in this state, and there's a lot of them in the 2 big liberal areas, Los Angeles and San Francisco, although San Francisco is a ghost town. And there's all sorts of stories about people that are going to be leaving San Francisco because it's untenable to be there. Remember, we had a massive homeless problem before this. Now they've shut down businesses. Something like 30 to 35% of all California restaurants are not going to reopen. That's a massive amount of people that have lost their jobs permanently and need to go elsewhere. So yes, there are some who like his brand of social justice. But even among Democrats in the legislature, they're not happy with Newsom because he's been doing this basically on his own. They granted him or appropriated a huge amount of money, billions, and he was supposed to confer with them, and he hasn't. He's been acting by himself. That has angered Democrats, and he's out there on an island. And so it is true that as we sit here today, that a majority of Californians would not vote to recall him. But then if you ask James Otis and Samuel Adams at the beginning of their revolutionary push, they would have said, no, just a few percent of Americans would have ever backed him, yet we managed to win the revolution.
Yeah. You're listening to Tom Del Beccaro, the author of The Divided Era, who's proposing a petition to recall the governor of the great state of California. And if you have any questions, you can email us at doc@johntantillo.com. That's doc@johntantillo.com. So, Tom, you said something very interesting, and some of you may or may not know this, but when I was a practicing political type, I was considered part of the reform movement in Queens County, and I was also anti-establishment and got us into a lot of trouble. And the leader, my leader at the time was Cliff Wilson, and he was the assemblyman, and he was a district leader in Queens County, and so I know what it means to be a outsider, as our president is. So what's your take, changing gears a little bit, what's your take on the generals, Mathis and Colin Powell, two grand brands? What's going on here?
Well, honestly, I don't think Colin Powell has a brand at all anymore. He has so compromised himself over the years. And look, America set up a system where we separated the military from the political, and we've never had a general for a president. So we have a civilian in the job, and that was a brilliant design by our founders. And throughout the centuries, we have had the generals have argued with the politicians. George Washington was quite angry at the Congress during the Continental Congress. You remember I think it was the Chicago Tribune, the great cartoon of the tiny Truman firing the giant of Marshall.
Yeah.
We cannot forget that Lincoln fired McClellan for inaction, was kind of rough on him, and then McClellan turned around and ran as a Democrat against him in the 1864 election. So this country has a rich history of generals fighting with their exes, if you will. And so look, Mattis, Trump's a bad breaker-upper, if we use that relationship dynamic. And so Mattis was spurned, but he also said ridiculous things. For Mattis to say it's the first president in his lifetime he doesn't care about unity is literally irresponsible on a good day and laughable always. He seems to forget that the Obama administration did not have a single bipartisan bill, that 4 months into Obama's presidency, he attacked anyone who was against Obamacare. And the Democrats were calling the Tea Party AstroTurf, meaning fake. And so the record of the Obama administration, which is part of the divided era, we have reached a point in the divided era, which started in the mid-90s, where under the Obama administration, there was no significant outreach to the other side. There is the Trump administration has done things like prison reform, like funding Black colleges and the like. But the problem is the media is so divided today, John, that CNN wouldn't tell the people of America if Trump gave out the winning lottery numbers. And so right now we have that breakdown. But for Mattis and the generals, this is kind of old news. And let me tell you something, why I have total disdain for Mattis and right now, and even the ex-president Bush, I think acted irresponsibly. They should have sat down with Trump in advance and said, look, here's how we feel. We want to do what's best for the country. You're making it impossible for us if that was their view. And they should have talked directly to the president. Right. Their grandstanding is beyond unappreciated in this divided era, certainly in my view.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's kind of early out there. I don't know if you took a look at what I put on my wall, but from my marketing background, this is a perfect Trump campaign ad, which goes something like this. They don't like him. It's exactly why you must vote for him. Trump again. He's not for them. I mean, I don't get it. These what I like to call geniuses don't understand Trump branding. They just don't get him. And that he is, for all intents and purposes, a reformer. And that the very people that that they think he's hurting, he's not hurting. And most people who are not political types like him. And I ask you to address that.
Yeah, look, in politics, when government breaks down and fails, which is often, people generally turn to an outsider.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Even in normal times, Republicans generally turn to governors from outside Washington to come fix Washington. So what you're highlighting is a historical dynamic, which is the outsider comes in and the insiders don't like him. And right. If the movement that got the outsider there to begin with is still together, insiders criticizing plays into the hand of the continuing outsider. And there's no question that the Bushes in the end became part of the inside, this notion that government was doing okay, no reason to upset the apple cart. And so you're right, Trump can turn this to say, the longtime Washington types still don't like me. Yeah. And you know what? They're not doing anything for you, so reelect me. So I agree, it plays into his brand as you described it.
Yeah. And, I've done a little bit of research on the people that really do not like Trump. And if you take a look at the folks that don't like him, they probably, I like to say it's about 35%. but it's what I would call the vociferous 35%. It is a minority who have decided that they are going to resist because Trump does not, they don't like Trump's form. They don't like his style. But what he's accomplishing is something that is to be should be emphasized. I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
look, go ahead.
well, you bring up a lot of points, and again, talking within the divided era, the two parties really don't talk much together and have completely different views. It was about a month ago, a poll came out that showed that 93% of Republicans approved of Trump and only 7 Democrats. Mirror opposites. That is because the parties have moved far apart and they have completely different medias, almost exclusively. And this has been going on and increasing since the early 90s. You have Democrats moving to their media, Republicans moving to their media, and the twain don't meet. CNN and MSNBC literally are not news organizations. They are providing a customer service and giving their viewers the information they think their viewers want. And so you have these two political worlds, and they're growing farther apart. And so the Democrats don't like Trump, but they also they are not going to like the next Republican either, because there's a 6-7, it's hard to know what the federal budget is right now, $7 trillion budget. And that's a lot of money to be handing out. And they want to be the one handing it out, as you can see by all the House measures, which are so far from, many of the House measures, so far from what a Republican president would sign. So you have these completely different worlds, and they're not going to like the next guy. Now, Trump is, remember, nice guy George Bush, 43, wound up intensely disliked and evil for the things he, quote, did. Trump is far more rough and tumble than Bush, yet Trump's approval rating isn't much different than Bush. So the real issue here is not, in my opinion, you're right, they don't like Trump. They're seizing on the fact of his tactics. But at the end of the day, no matter who runs for president next, he's going to have a high disapproval rating from the other side. That's the brand of division we have in America today.
You see, I think that politically, Trump may be in trouble, but from a marketing perspective, he's very strong. And that's really, go ahead.
Let's talk about where we are politically, because there's all the major polls, all the major media polls are pushing this narrative that Biden has the lead. And it's very easy for them to do, because as I remember, I described 93% Republicans support Trump, 7% of Democrats. So it's very easy to do a poll. If you want an outcome, when you ask a Democrat, overwhelmingly, they're not going to like the Republican. And no matter what Democrat they put in there, and the Republicans are not going to like the Democrat. So if you want to work a poll, fake poll, however you want to describe it, you just skew the poll to one party or another.
I agree.
And you have this CNN poll out today that says the electorate on electorate day, and that's what a poll should be about, is 32% Democrat, 25 Republican, 44 independent. I agree with the 44 independent, but the 32-25 is ridiculous. Let me tell you why it's ridiculous. First of all, Rasmussen, which got the popular vote exactly right between Clinton and Trump, says that Trump approval ratings at 48%, 47% today, 48 on Friday, And it says that more than 40% of blacks approve of the president. That's a historic number. You have a different poll done by a Latino organization that said only 50% of them are prepared to vote for Biden. Biden's enthusiasm is the worst of any major candidate, according to among Democrats, according to ABC and the Washington Post. Yes, that's a media poll, but it's within Democrats, so you can look at it from how Democrats feel about their own candidate. You put that all together, the idea that election day, as we see here today, is going to be 32% Democrats and 25% Republicans is ridiculous. But this is how they give their consumers what they want instead of trying to reflect reality.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. You know, I teach a course in digital marketing, and about a month ago, the good folks at the Atlantic, and it must have killed them. It basically said how far ahead the Trump campaign, from a digital marketing perspective, was ahead of the Democrats.
Like
And
6-1.
the different, but the difference between a digital campaign and a traditional campaign, and I'll explain to you why the Democrats go more for the traditional, has to do with this concept of voter tracking, which is on the digital side, as opposed to voter registration. Now, voter registration, and I was a little concerned. I took a look at the Gallup party affiliation, and the Democrats are up another point. So it's 31% Democrats, it's a 28% Republicans, and 30 and change, 32, 33 independents, and the others are undecided. So what that's telling me is that there seems to be some sort of a push on the Democrats' part to do this registration. But the problem, as you well know, and you just mentioned it, is on election day, who do these newly registered people vote for? Do they vote Democratic, or do they vote their pocketbooks? I ask you to respond.
Well, and that's the problem with Joe Biden. Joe Biden's proposing a massive tax increase. Joe Biden's proposing a massive move to the left. Joe Biden is Joe Biden, and apparently 10 to 15% of the Americans are bad people. That means 50 million of us deplorables or whatever else. Remember, you know, he himself had his gaffe about saying how bad, you know, Americans are before, are Trump supporters, right? So it's an abstract discussion. If you ask 32 Democrats who they're going to vote for, 31 of them are going to say the Democrat, and so and then they say, well, how enthusiastic do you feel about Joe Biden? And he gets the worst ever. So it's still an open question who's going to show up on election day. But if the Democrats start feeding into this position of defund the police, and a recent poll showed 65 to like 7, that's not approved, they're going to continue to do self-harm. Now, keep in mind, I expect this, unlike everyone else, unlike a lot of people, I never thought this election was going to be anything but close. We have to remember, not since 1988 has a president received 53% of the vote. And the Republicans have lost 4 out of the last 5 elections. But here's what I do know. A CNBC poll Yes, a media poll, but I find it interesting that they have Trump up 4% over Biden in Pennsylvania. Now, why does that matter? Well, Pennsylvania is Biden's claimed home. He's from Scranton, even though he moved to Delaware. But if the Democrats can't win Pennsylvania, John, they can't win the election.
Right. Right. Well, you know, when people, and there's one friend of mine who is she's basically had it with Trump. And my response is, you may have it with Trump, but look at the alternative. The Democrats, in my humble opinion, are not thinking in terms of the man and woman on the street. They're thinking in terms of other Democrats. Their appeal is it's bizarre. I mean, think about getting rid of police departments. I mean, this is nuts. And I believe that we should do something about this police situation. I'm not forgetting about that. But the mere suggestion and the idea that they're embracing it, I ask you to respond. You've been in politics a little bit deeper than I have, but why don't you?
Yeah, look, it's a losing position, but we need to remember, and I've been trying to get people to understand this, and it's becoming more true every day as the divided era. And for those who haven't seen my book, I'm not sure if it's coming backwards or not, but in the divided era, we need to remember that the Democrat Party apparatus and most of its voters, the majority of Democrat voters, do not vote the economy. They vote social justice. This nation is so rich, and their economic, as a historical matter, their economic security is so high, because even if you lose a job, you can get high unemployment benefits that exceed what you were making in your job, that their focus is social justice. So they tend to take that to the extreme, which is what you're talking about, defunding.
Well, I guess this is a good time to say we're talking with Tom Del Beccaro, the author. That's okay. I'm giving you a plug. We're talking with Tom Del Beccaro, the author of The Divided Era, which is a perfect book to buy online on Amazon. And because of the situation that we're in today. And we're on, you're listening to BrandTalkk, and it's another way to talk where we're not yelling and screaming at each other. And we have a different point of view. And here you go. And Tom, you know, you were talking about the ideology that economic concerns are not on the minds of most Americans. Social justice is, and I'd like you to complete that.
Most Democrats, most Republicans still want to focus on the economy and individual freedoms. Most Democrats are about social justice. And of course, this is part of our great divide, because those are completely separate issues in minds of many people.
Yeah. And in the article or the column that I wrote for Newsmax about a month ago, I talked about how, for all intents and purposes, Democrats are not involved in business. They're involved in being lawyers and teachers and college professors. They're in the media. They're everything that is not business oriented. And it comes basically it comes down to about 24% of the working force is either medical or in the medical field or in those fields that I just mentioned, and 74 to 76% are involved in either small or large businesses, make their money from large or small businesses. So it is very, very consistent. And you and I also share something when we talk about these two different groups, is that most people don't like politics. You would probably say they hate politics, and the people that are stirring the pot here are the people that love politics and who feel that what Trump has done he's broken the system. Why don't you respond to that?
Well, I agree. The rise in independents generally don't like when government's not functioning well. They don't like partisanship, and they don't want to hear the noise. So the rise in independence is perfectly predictable, along with the rise in the size of government. That's been true throughout all of history. Now, you know, your last comment relates to the fact that all of this yelling and the like pushes them away. But our founders, this is why our founders didn't want a large government. They wanted us to work out things to ourselves. But to that last point, Trump didn't break the system. This existed at the end of the Obama presidency. If you would have taken a poll at the time of the Obama presidency, you would have found that the Republicans would not support a Democrat candidate. The Democrats would not support a Republican candidate generically, forgetting about the fact that we have 24/7 running for president these days. You would not have heard, they wouldn't have crossed over. And because they're so far apart, this fighting is endemic. And that's why the tagline I use, the more government decides, the more it divides, because the more power you give government, the more it picks a winner and loser in every determination it makes and creates that competition. And so whether it would have been Trump this time around or John Tantillo or, God forbid, Tom Del Beccaro, you would have had this. Well, I think I would have done a better job, but you would have had, just kidding. You're going to have the division. Whoever wins the presidency next, you know, in 2024, you're going to have this division. And by the way, as long as we're talking about 2024, if either one of these candidates wins, for sure they're not going to run the next time. And that means it's open on both sides. And you're going to have 80 to 100 people running for president.
Yes. And as I said, you're listening to Tom Del Beccaro, the author of The Divided Era, and the person who is starting a petition to recall the governor of California. So what do you?
Petition's already out there. I didn't start it. I just joined. But it's Recall Gavin 2020.
Who started it?
It's a citizens group headed up by an ex-police officer, Warren Heatley. He got the petition. I joined it. Basically, when Gavin Newsom, you know, incredibly, Gavin Newsom took $1 billion of the state money, entered into a contract, refuses to show us the contract. I don't even see how that's possible. To give a donor a $1 billion deal to produce the masks that people wear. The donor company had never produced such a mask. They tried to produce two of them so far, and the FDA's turned them both down. And yet there's still all that money hanging out there that the state has given him, and he refuses to disclose a contract. It's ridiculous at so many levels that Gavin Newsom is governor at this point.
I can't understand why people are not more outraged. These political types, they should be, screaming. I don't get how they can criticize Trump and and tolerate the deals that have gone on with China, where our drugs are being manufactured in China. I don't get it. My lefty friend should be screaming about this. Go ahead,
John. In the divided era, your guy is good, my guy is bad.
Right.
It doesn't matter who they are.
That's exactly that. That's exactly right. And I'm a marketing guy. I keep talking about the marketing. And when you talk about marketing, it's focusing on what people need or what people want. People do not care about beltway gossip. They could care less what Colin Powell or Mathis or Mitt Romney or any of these geniuses or Murkowski from Alaska think of Trump. They are going to vote not, and you know this because you've been in politics. In politics, the old adage, it's not what have you done for me, it's what have you done for me lately. And if the economy is going
John,
go ahead. What's that? Tom, what did you say?
I'm going to update that and say for many in the electorate, I'm going to update your comment to say many in the electorate now say it's what have you done for me tomorrow?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's moving fast.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it's it's going. And and practicality always, and don't mind the pun, trumps ideology. I mean, I sometimes get a kick that I'm listening to these campaign geniuses, and it's like going taking a course in political science, a graduate course in political science, and what they're talking about. You gotta speak. I don't hear anybody talking about healthcare. I don't see how they're doing nutsiness here. I mean, I just don't get that.
You bring an interesting.
What's that?
You bring an interesting point, and I'll say you raise an interesting point, and the point is this: I don't think that just being against the other side in presidential elections work. If they could, the anger against Obama on the right was significant as he posed for re-election, but it wasn't enough. The anger against Bush 43 was significant, but it wasn't. Anger alone wasn't enough. Will anger alone be enough in this election? Now, look, divided era is worse now. The media is more divided. Partisanship is on the rise. It's been on the rise, by the way, since the early 90s. So I don't want to hear about it's only Trump. That's false. The very nature of my book is to get people to understand why partisanship has been on the rise for decades. And today we're just seeing the latest symptoms. But generally, just being against the other guy is not enough.
Well, and what you've said is the basics of marketing. I always go back to marketing, and my journalist friends roll their eyes when I talk about that. You never sell by being negative. The Uncola that 7-Up used as a marketing campaign never went anywhere because it was the okay. They were trying to go against the colas. You can't do it. You got to give people reasons for voting for you. And with all due respect, and I really have a problem even going here and saying it, I mean, Joe Biden just doesn't have it. And I just think that I just don't understand how they can do it. I don't understand how, there are people have problems with Trump. Take a look at the alternative, okay? And I mean, and let's not be emotional. Go ahead. You're gonna.
Yeah, Biden's a bad candidate in general. He always has been. He was rescued by the Democrats so they could rescue themselves from Bernie Sanders.
Right.
He's got a bad platform. Their hope is to push up voter dissatisfaction as a way to win, because they don't have what you say is a positive agenda which voters can buy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you something. Do you think that Bernie Sanders would have been a better candidate than Joe Biden?
Well,
from their
I think Bernie Sanders would have been better in the debates than Joe. I think Bernie Sanders would be better in the debates than Joe Biden will end up being. But no, I think Bernie Sanders was a narrow candidate. And look, I don't think the Democrats have a good choice right now.
I agree with you.
They need a new generation of people.
I agree with you.
And they don't have it right now.
Here's my prediction. Let me go on the edge and say this. I think they would have done better with a personality like a George Clooney, like a Rock. And that's what I think you're going to see. You're going to see, or a Mark Cuban, some sort, even for that matter, even though I think he was a poor candidate, Schultz, the guy from the coffee company there, Starbucks. In other words, they need a personality. I think that because we're in a personality social media era, and that's what's going on. Go ahead. You want to?
Elections are generally reactions. Elections are generally reactions to what went before, and so remember you had Slick Willie, and then they went to a more plain-spoken Bush. You again had Obama, who seemed very, urbane, and then the reaction was to the more blunt Trump. You don't get that change with Biden. There's nothing dynamic about him. So I think the Democrats would have been better with someone who was what Schultz could have brought to them is someone who potentially was softer spoken but pragmatic. You're not going to get that with Biden.
Okay. Well,
you're not going to get that with Biden. He's just not that good as a candidate.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Tom. Is there? But before you go, I know you got to go. One thing: do the Democrats win the Senate, and do the Democrats maintain the House? Before you go,
They don't get the Senate. They don't get the Senate. I think the House, if it was decided today, would probably stay with the Democrats. But a month from now, I think with the economy coming back, if the vote were in September, I think it's probably 52-48. It could go Republican.
Well, okay. Well, thank you. This is Tom Del Beccaro, the author of The Divided Era. You can get it on Amazon. It's well worth the read. You can also see him on Fox News, Fox Business, and of course on Newsmax. and he's got his what is it, a weekly show on KRON in the San Francisco Bay Area, right, on politics, right? Am I right, Tom?
Yeah, I'm a commentator. I'm a commentator there.
Well,
Yes, I'm a commentator
yes,
on
okay,
Kana on KRON.
okay. And
All
I
right,
want to
John,
thank.
thanks so much.
Okay, want to thank you for stopping by. It was great having you. And for those of you
I
who
hope to see you more.
who visited us on Brand Talk, I want to uh, and yes, I just wanted to say that Brand Talk is another way to talk. See, I got to become better at getting the incoming calls. I'm not a broadcaster as of yet. I'm a narrowcaster. So thanks again, Tom. That's it. I'll see you next week on Brand Talk. We'll have another brand to discuss his brand or her brand. Be good. Bye bye. Thanks a lot.